Because right here we have no freedom. Here, a little bit more. Here, a little bit more. But it's not until we get to this next level that we really start to live in freedom. And this next level here of freedom is called obedience. And by the way, in Acts 20:35, Jesus says this, it's more blessed to give than to receive. Jesus is quoted as saying that. So the next step that moves us further from being owned is what we label obedience. Being obedient. Now, what does obedience look like? People have talked about the tithe. In the Old Testament, it was you give 10% of what you have to the priest, to the temple, and then they would distribute it as needed. And generally speaking, hear me on this, generally speaking, because there's so much nuance to what I'm about to say, so much nuance to it, but generally speaking, the tithe was 10%, and the offering was anything above and beyond the tithe. So the Israelites were called to give 10%, and then anything above that was an offering. Now, there's so much nuance to that. That's at a very basic level, because I don't want to spend all this time going into some technicalities. However, we come to the New Testament, and people say, well, there's no tithing in the New Testament. Well, partly there's no tithing in the New Testament. I'd say there's maybe one or two mentions of tithing, but it's a different mentality. It's we don't give because we have to, we give because we want to. And so the obedient part is when we look at passages like we just read, and it says that be like this church here who had nothing and going through persecution, going through some just stuff, but yet they were still giving financially to those, to the apostles to further the kingdom. That is powerful. That is being obedient. So is there a certain amount you should give? Here's my philosophy. The goal is 10%. However, we know life hits. We know there's situations. We know there's kids. We know there's family things that we have to do. We know that there's extended family, whatever it is. The goal is you have the 10%. I think that's a good goal to aim for. And my pastor from years ago, he and his family would give 20% to the church. Isn't that phenomenal? 20%. 20%. Yeah. And so they would give 20%. So the goal is this, is that you aim for 10%, but you don't stop there. So obedience is, yes,